We're going to talk about STAAR and other tests. So we will have our first round of administration on March 31st and April 1st. English 1 will be March 31st, English 2 will be April 1st. Then in May we'll have Algebra 1 on May 5th, Biology May 6th, and U.S. History on May 7th. This is when students will be able to retake the tests if they missed it the first time. And then we have our retakes, so for students that don't pass it or for some reason miss both the July and May or April administration, this will be when they have the opportunity to retake the test next year. Start and stop times. The time period starts when the test administrator finishes reading the directions and students are told to begin. Biology, Algebra 1, U.S. History will be 4-hour exams. English 1 and English 2, so this first round of administration will be 5-hour exams. The start and stop time needs to be recorded on the seating chart, which I will provide for you guys, and students have to record all their answers before the time period ends, at which point the test administrator needs to directions from the test booklet need to be read out loud. It's important that we announce the time left to the test. You guys will get laminated sheets that have these times on there. It should be from 5 hours up until time's up, and those are the increments that they need to be told to students. Again, this is to ensure that students across if a student arrives late, I will decide whether or not the student has time to complete the test that day. If they do, the student needs to be allowed the same amount of time. So for the 4 or 5 hours, they need to be kept aware of the time they have left in the same manner that other students are being. By breaks. First, there's the ones where the time continues to go. Then there are the breaks where the time does stop. This is lunch, if there's an emergency situation, if we need to consolidate students and move them to a new testing environment, if there's a medical break. So this is an example of something that would be for an individual student. During this time, the time is stopped and restarted when students begin. If a student needs to leave to the nurse, again, the clock stops for them. This needs to be documented on the seating chart, and the student will restart once they return. If this does happen, please inform me and make sure that I know so that there's an emergency situation, please, 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 please. If there's a school emergency, we're going to follow the normal protocols. Remember, safety first. We're going to follow the same campus regulations for exiting the building. So during lunch, students can stop testing to take a supervised lunch. I hope to set up the schedule so that students can go back to lunch the normal way, and so that we don't have any lunch happening in our classrooms or things like that. But if there is a situation we're going to need to do that, the testing time is stopped for the lunch break and restarts when students resume taking the test. These times need to be recorded on the test booklet, and while they're eating their lunch, answer documents need to be stuck inside the test booklets, and everything needs to be collected. So they cannot leave it out on their desk while they're eating lunch. It needs to be collected and put away while they're eating, and there needs to be active monitoring. So we may have multiple test sessions. I don't see that happening because because the schedule is set up so that there's only one test a day. There might not be multiple test sessions. However, in May there will be some overlap with AP testing, and Mayla and I. This is accommodations. There are so type 1 is for students who have a specific need and who if there's an unexpected emergency, and the student needs to have some type of accommodation, please reach out to me. I will follow up with TEA and see if we can give them the accommodation. So this, for example, would be a student that breaks their arm the day before testing, and so now needs somebody to transcribe the material for them or something along those lines. If that's the case, reach out to me and I'll follow up. Again, just take a second to read. If you're wondering why these types of accommodations are provided for ELLs, it's because we want to decrease the language barrier that ELLs experience when they're learning and demonstrating knowledge and skills in English. These are some of the ELL accommodations that could be provided. You'll notice that a bilingual dictionary is not supplied for English 1 or English 2, so these won't be. So students that are testing with accommodations will be in another room. Most of our students receive small group testing, and so those types of conversations I'll have specific. There's extended time accommodations, and that could include extra time or extra day. Um, Again, students that receive that type of information will. Extra time on the same day allows students to start at the beginning of the school day, but they're allowed to test. Extra day accommodation allows a student to test over multiple. These are allowable test administrative procedures and materials. If a student is taking STAAR L, they should not be in a room with STAAR or STAAR modified assessments. So if for some reason you have that type of situation in your room, which should not happen, please inform me. Don't just allow the student to take the test in the room. And small group and individual administrations are important for our students, and so they'll be receiving that in separate classrooms. If you see a student that is supposed to have small group administration, or you are concerned and think that they're supposed to, please reach out to me. Don't just. If you have any questions about how students have been grouped, if something looks odd to you, or you're wondering why a specific student is in your room and you think they should be someplace else, please reach out to me. These are the ways that students should be. Test security, make sure you go through the test security PowerPoint. It's important that we provide our students with as a testing administrator, these are some of your responsibilities. The one that you guys need to worry about is the second here, which is to revise testing roster to ensure students are in their appropriate place. If you are, again, are concerned or worried or think that a student is not where they belong, please let me know. If you see your roster doesn't match the students in your room, It's also a responsibility to monitor testing. So you must be present during the entire test administration. It should be you and no more than 30 students in the room. If I've somehow assigned you to more than 30 students, please let me know. Make sure that you're actively monitoring. Um, this means that you're confirming that students are working at the right place, that they're filling in the answer sheet correctly. Students should be reminded periodically to record their responses on their scoreable documents. Remember, the things that are in test booklets will not be scored, and it has to be done within the time period. You can say, reinforcing, reviewing for, and or distributing testing strategies is prohibited. So even trying to give a student some type of strategy to do better on the test or something like that should not be done. Students need to take the test. Students are supposed to remain in their seat during testing and should not talk to one another. They're also not allowed to work on any other area in the test book. Once time limit has ended, students cannot record their answers. That's why it's important we remind them throughout the testing to record their answers on the answer document. We will not be using large print or braille, so that is not relevant to us. Um, this accommodation is not relevant for our campus. However, there are students that are receiving a lot of accommodations, and those things will be prepared before testing begins. And I will have uh, seating charts are extremely important because these need to be turned in with every test session. It needs to include the name of students testing and the location of the room. All Students should receive 2 number 2 pencils. Students can be provided dictionaries by the school, or they can bring them from home. There should be 1 dictionary for every 5 students, although we are going to shoot for 1 for every 3. The types of dictionaries allowed are a standard dictionary in English or a dictionary thesaurus combination. Bilingual dictionaries are allowed. ESL dictionaries are allowed. Dictionary needs to be available for all. So while paper and electronic dictionaries are permitted, there are stipulations for the electronic ones, and so as students complete the math and science EOCs, they should be provided a calculator. There needs to be a graphing calculator for each student that takes the Algebra 1 exam, and there needs to be a calculator available. Students will be provided the calculator so that we ensure that incorrect calculators are not used. It's also important that these calculators are clear to factory default both before and after testing. So makeup tests are allowed for all subjects. So EOC reference materials for STAAR math and science assessments are included in the test booklets. Again, all test materials will be issued using a materials control form and a 9. After you verify that you received the correct number of test booklets, this is important. Remember that All answers need to be marked on an answer document with a number 2 pencil. Do not allow students to use mechanical pencils. Answers marked in non-scorable test booklet will not be scored, and test administrators are not allowed to require students to mark the answers in the test booklet and then transfer them to the answer document. So students can start immediately with the answer document. Um, Students may use highlighters or colored pencils if they'd like. However, make sure they're not using that. Some students are going to finish earlier than others, and if that's the case, they can quietly read a book. Um, when they turn in their test materials, the test administrator must inspect the completed answer document and make sure that all answers are bubbled in. If this is not the case, the only thing you can at that point you can give the student. If needed, there might be some situations where I'll ask you to transcribe a student response. Um, However, if that's the case, you'll receive special training on doing so. Please do not transcribe any student responses unless you receive the specific. Test administrators cannot answer any questions related to the content of the test. Remember, you're not allowed to translate test questions or passages into another language except sign language. You can't rephrase or add information to questions or the prompt. You shouldn't discuss test questions at any time, and you shouldn't score test items or Remember, you're not allowed to assist a student with the written composition or open-ended items at any time. You can't elaborate on the prompt, give a student an opening or closing sentence, give students an outline for organizing the composition, give them information on how to develop If a student needs Here's a summary of everything. It's essential that you read the test administrator manual. This will count as the training for the STAAR test. It's important that you complete If you do not follow testing procedures, it could affect a student's performance in school.